So let's talk a little bit about Route 53 in this case. Route 53, which despite me looking up where Route 53 is in the US multiple times so that I could make some kind of comment at this exact moment, I've since forgotten where it is basically their DNS service, right? And Route 53 has a lot of really cool features, most of which we don't need in this case. Like, it has stuff like, cool, you can have your servers hosted multiple places, and it will detect if one goes down and doesn't pass a health check and route all the traffic to another server. Or if one is slower from a given place, it'll route it to the faster one, so on and so forth. We need it for registering a domain name. If you have a domain name somewhere else, you can use that. You do need to probably tell Route 53 about it at some point. One of the reasons, though, if you are going to get a new domain name that I would recommend doing in Route 53 is hooking it up to some of the other Amazon stuff is incredibly simple, right? If you host it somewhere else, then it's going to be a little bit trickier, right? And there are guides on how to point at Route 53 and then get the rest of that for free. That's kind of somewhat outside the scope of this because each one will be slightly different. But I'm going to go ahead and register a domain with Route 53 in this case. This is a totally optional part. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. I'm going to do it for anyone that needs to, right, or wants to. But if you just want to use whatever the CloudFront domain we get towards the end of this workshop is, totally fine. You won't miss out on anything except some ridiculous domain name as I live shop for domain names. Awesome. We're not even going to try to get a .com. We'll go ahead and say, what's a .cheap? No, I'm too cheap. Too cheap to pay for a .cheap. I'm not paying $30 for a domain name. .click? Where's .click? Yeah, oh yeah. .click is $3. We're going to do that. So we'll go ahead and say super awesome. Nope, don't put that space in there, autocomplete. Awesome, I'm going to put that in my cart. I'll pay $3 for this domain name. I'm going to pause for a moment in case you're doing this with me. I've done this now multiple times. And every time, I put it in the cart, and I look for the button to buy the domain name. Yeah, some of you are like, I don't see the button. Don't scroll. You got to scroll all the way down, and it's underneath the rest of the options of ones you could have put in your cart. It lives down there. It doesn't matter how many times I've done this. I literally just now was like, where's the button? And then I remembered how angry I get at this moment. Cool. At that point, you will put in your registering contact. So I am also we're going to cut to a break in a second, and I'm going to fill this piece out. So I've registered it. The one thing I want to point out is, theoretically, I have received an email. I have 15 days to verify that email. If not, they will suspend it, and they are reminding me that a suspended domain is not available on the internet, which is my understanding of what would happen if you suspended a domain. So if you right now want to go check, you can go absolutely do that. I'm not. I live dangerously. Also, I'm not super invested in this. So you can see domain registration is in progress. So that is good. We will kind of let that cook for a little bit. It's like a cooking show where you put something in the oven for a little bit, and maybe there's an already done turkey somewhere as well. We'll let that cook, and we'll go back to setting up our S3 bucket. So with that, we'll say S3. One thing that we don't have to really worry about now because S3 is global is there are certain things that, like for instance, some of the Lambda Edge stuff that we're going to talk about that is only available in US East 1. So I'm going to kind of point that out now and remind later. We're still not at that point yet. But right now at this moment in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I am, I guess closest to US East 2. Denver gets me closer to US West, so it's real hit or miss where we make those decisions. But being US East 1 for this workshop is probably the easiest. Otherwise, you might have to sometimes jump over to US East 1 for things. So I will kind of point that out at some point. But S3 is global in this case, so we don't necessarily need to worry about it. Let's go ahead. We have 2 buttons that we can click for creating a bucket. Whichever one makes you happier. For me, personally, the orange one makes me happier, so I'm going to click that one. And we're going to give it a name, and superawesome.click. And here's my first opportunity to put this in the right region. So I'm going to go put it in US East 1. Like I said, it's not a total requirement. Generally speaking, like if for some reason, like let's say this was a bucket that you were doing a bunch of data analytics and you needed to use it as like a data lake, so you could process stuff from your local machines or stuff along those lines, you might choose a region closest to you. It doesn't always have to be US East 1, just to make sure we're all on the same page, both on the live stream and recording and in the room. Let's all just get in the same region. And let's make that US East 1 for some reasons. Not all Amazon features are available in all the regions, but US East 1 almost always gets everything first. So it makes sense to just pick that one as our default in this case. All right, we don't seek to choose an existing bucket to copy our settings from. That should be obvious. Why? The reason, because we don't have one. OK, so then ACLs for specific objects, access control lists. We're going to go with the recommended option here, which is don't do it. This is going to be a controversial section that we're going to turn on and off at different points in our lives. This is block all public access settings for the bucket. At various times, there weren't as much rules around this. This is why people ended up with the public buckets. Sometimes there are also, I've heard stories where it's like, there was an outage, somebody made the bucket public real quick to go ahead and like fix something. And then the outage was over. The bucket was still public, right? But it's tricky for us, right? We want to put a web page on the internet, people to look at publicly, right? So for us at this moment, we're going to turn it off because we don't have all the pieces we need to kind of do the kind of wiring through AWS around this stuff. So we're going to turn it off for now. And you can see that they are very, very strict about this. We will add some policies, stuff along those lines. But for now, that is going to be the case. And we'll talk about different things that we can do at various points as well. OK, we talked about bucket versioning earlier in the slides. This was, again, like if you want to keep every previous version, we have Git, where we can go back to previous versions. Also, in the case of the React app that I have, Webpack is going to stamp each version. And so the same way I told you that I don't delete the previous generated files, it's kind of like I have my own versioning, right? In my case. But if you were storing like things where you might need like all the previous versions of whatever that data was, you can turn versioning on. It does incur a cost because it's just more storage, right? So we're going to keep that disabled, and we'll have the tags. We're not going to be using them. We again also don't need server-side encryption. In advanced settings, we don't need that either. And with that, I have my first